So I'm at the hospital. It's raining, which is cute. But here I am, I'm ready to go. I'm a little bit nervous, but hospitals in general are quite scary, I think. I hope I'm in the right place. I've already got lost once, so wish me luck. Ooh. Hey girl. How do we feel about centre partings these days? Also, why do I look like I'm about to correct your pronunciation of Leviosa? Hello everybody, my name is Lucy. For those of you who know me, you already knew that, I guess. Those of you who don't know me, that's my name. I decided I wanted to put this little situation together to talk about something that I don't think is spoken about very often, and that is smear tests, results of smear tests, general health and well-being of one's cervix, if you will. So I did actually make YouTube videos like a while ago now, just talking about, you know, nice things, anything to do with mental health and ways of being a bit more positive or dealing with your anxiety. And then I kind of just stopped because life did its thing and I was busy doing other stuff. And for like a couple of months now, particularly I think during lockdown, I wanted to kind of get back into it, but I just didn't really know what to talk about. Then I had my smear test. So I think everyone who owns a cervix probably knows what a smear test is and what it involves. But for anyone who maybe doesn't know, a smear test is what cervix owners are invited to attend up to every 3 years. What it involves is a speculum is inserted into the vagina and into the cervix. It's opened up and some swabs are taken. It probably takes like 2 minutes. Smear tests not only look for abnormal cells in the cervix, but they also, in most areas, test for HPV. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of things are picked up in the smear and what results you could get. So first of all, HPV stands for human I thought it was pavlova for a really long time, which sounds a lot nicer. Human people will be infected with human papillomavirus. Papilloma. So, human papillomavirus. That's probably the only time I'm going to be able to say it again. So, from now on, we'll just call it HPV. It's not something that we're taught about in schools, despite how common it is. I think the only time I heard about it in school was when they were shooting that vaccine up for it. And we were all like, what is that? So HPV, like I said, is a really common virus that around 80 to 90% of people will get at some point in their life. There's roughly 200 strains, 15 or 16 of which are considered high risk and are mostly associated with cervical cancer. And the vaccine that you're offered in school is the vaccine that covers those 15 to 16 strains. Is HPV an STI? Yeah. It is. You can get it through sexual intercourse or sexual contact, but it's also not just an STI. I could have an open wound on my body somewhere and I could give someone else with an open wound a hug, and then our blood has sort of mingled in together and I've transmitted the HPV to that person that way. So it is not just through sexual intercourse or sexual contact. And as I said, it is very easy to catch. As cervical cancer is so slow growing, we are invited, like I said, every 3 years to have a smear test. And it's quite common, this is what my nurse told me, for people to actually get HPV and for your immune system to clear it out in between smears. So you don't even realise that you've had it in between, but you have clear smears either side of it. That's how common it is, and you just don't know you have it. Now, I know quite a lot of people who are a little bit stumped when they find out they have HPV because they're in long-term relationships and it's kind of just come out of nowhere, or perhaps they didn't have it in a previous smear and it's not really clear where it came from. It is actually possible to have HPV for quite a number of years, but for it to lie dormant and not show up in any sort of tests, and then one day it just kind of pops up from nowhere and starts doing its thing. Sometimes HPV can even be a little bit more persistent and reluctant to leave the nice little home that it's made in your body. I have also spoken to quite a few people that did have the vaccine in school and so are understandably quite confused as to how they've still ended up with HPV. Now remember what I said earlier about the HPV vaccine working on those 15 to 16 high risk strains, and also remember that there are quite a few others out there. There isn't currently a cure for HPV, but it can be monitored very closely and you are in safe hands. So all I will say is if you do have HPV, just do as much research as you can and don't be afraid of it. As I said before, in the majority of cases, HPV will just be cleared out of your body and you won't even know. Ooh, quick costume change. So the other thing that the smear tests will be looking for are any abnormalities in your cervical cells. If you do have changes to the cells in your cervix, these will either be mild, borderline or low-grade dyskaryosis or high-grade dyskaryosis. Now, obviously that sounds a little bit intimidating. The word dyskaryosis took me about a month to pronounce, but it just means basically abnormalities. Do these abnormalities on any level mean you have cancer? Absolutely not. All it means is that you have some cells in your cervix on some level that have changed and look a little bit peculiar, and they may or may not become cancerous at some point in your life. And fun fact, cervical cancer can actually take up to 10 years to develop. It's actually really common for those low, mild / borderline grade changes to reverse themselves, which I thought sounded a bit strange, but each to their own. And the outcome of what happens next will depend on your results as a whole. So when my results came back, I had high risk HPV, so one of those tricky, cheeky 15 or 16 high risk types that is associated with cervical cancer. And I also had low grade dyskaryosis. I didn't find out in my letter. You will usually get your results in a letter, but the coronavirus and Royal Mail have a little bit of beef at the minute, and I'm just not receiving any letters, any of the important ones anyway. Junk mail is flying through like there's no tomorrow. So it did take a little bit longer for me to get my results. I've known people get them in 2 weeks. It took mine about 6 weeks, but as I say, that was due to the current situation that we were in. So I was a little bit anxious at this point, and I called up my GP, and the receptionist managed to tell me the results. But obviously she's not qualified to explain what they mean. So I was quite upset by this point, hearing all these big scary words, especially things like high risk. And I kind of had a clue what HPV was, but I just didn't expect that I would have it. I've no idea where it came from. So, you know, I think this response is quite common in people who get these results and don't know what they mean. I honestly thought that was it. I was pretty convinced I had cancer, and I was quite devastated. But the lady in reception actually got a nurse to call me back later in the day just to help me go through my results and actually explain to me what they meant. So as I said, I have low-grade dyskaryosis, which in her words is quote unquote the most boring type of change that you can get. So she was super positive about it and just, yeah, helped me rationalize it a little bit more because the fear of the unknown is definitely a thing. I had to wait roughly a month, maybe just over a month, between getting my results and having my colposcopy, which I had this morning, and that is what I'll get onto next. The time between actually getting the smear and having my colposcopy this morning was about 10 weeks, so just under 3 months, which may sound like quite a long time to, I suppose, leave things unchecked, but in the grand scheme of cervical cancer, that's actually quite a short amount of time because it is a really slow progressing disease. So a colposcopy is what I like to describe as sort of a glorified smear test. The procedure takes a little bit longer, roughly around 10 minutes to I think half an hour is probably the longest it could take. Mine, I think, probably took roughly about 7 minutes, which I know is quite specific and I wasn't timing it, but it felt longer than 5 minutes and less than 10 minutes. So I've gone for a nice 7. Procedure-wise, it starts off pretty similar to the smear test. The speculum is inserted again and you're cranked open so they can have a nice look inside. I had 3 really wonderful ladies in there with me. The one lady who was looking on the colposcope, I think that's what it's called. It's like a microscope, but a colposcope. And there were another 2 ladies in there as well, and they were just really nice to have a chat to about anything related, some things unrelated. We talked about my socks, because I made a real effort with my socks, because this was like, you know, the highlight of my social calendar this year. So once the speculum is inserted, they'll wipe a solution on the cervix, and that changes any abnormal cells white, just so they can get a clearer view of them. You have the option to look at your cervix on the screen, which I didn't personally want to do at first, and then when I got in there I said to myself, why not just be brave and have a look, and at least I can then understand what the lady is talking about for myself. And it wasn't as icky as I thought. At first I, you know, kind of wanted to deny the idea of having insides, but it was actually really interesting to see, especially as I've tried so hard to understand these things. I thought, why not go the whole hog and have a look. And I could see a couple of white cells on there. I asked if that looked like a problem, and she said that's most likely the abnormal cells that your initial smear test picked up. I found myself asking quite a few times if she could see any problems or any areas of concern, and she was really honest with me, saying that she couldn't really spot anything, but it is really useful to know that you can ask at any point and they will let you know. She then took a biopsy, which is basically a small snippet of your cervix is taken off. It's actually called a punch biopsy. So if you hear that term, that's what that means. And she took off 2 samples. Now this was the bit I was most anxious about, because I thought it was her. When I tell you I felt nothing, I felt nothing. She asked me to cough as it pushes the cervix down. I haven't had children, so my cervix is quite high up, which is where it should be if you haven't had children yet. But she asked me to cough just to help push it down, so I, you know, beefed up and gave out quite a manly cough in their words, which, you know, flex. And yeah, she took just 2 little snippets, and honestly I felt nothing, barely even a pinch. Maybe she didn't even do it. They then add a silver nitrate solution, which helps to heal the cervix and the wounds that were created by taking that little punch biopsy. The time between actually getting the smear and having my colposcopy this morning was about 10 weeks, so just under 3 months, which may sound like quite a long time to, I suppose, leave things unchecked, but in the grand scheme of cervical cancer, that's actually quite a short amount of time, because it is a really slow progressing disease. Now, as I said before, whatever happens next for you will just depend on the outcome of your smear. Obviously, if it comes back totally normal, then, you know, you'll just go back for your next one in 3 years. If you are found to have a HPV, they'll probably see you in 1 year. Maybe a low-grade dyskaryosis by itself, they might wait a year. Me personally, because I had the HPV as well as the low-grade dyskaryosis, it was pretty likely that that HPV is what was causing those cells to change. So it is probably likely that if those cells went untreated, they could become cancerous at some point in my life. So after my colposcopy, I had, I mean, it felt kind of like period cramps pretty much immediately, which I was expecting, and you'll also probably experience maybe a bit of spotting and some discharge, because quite a lot of solutions have been put up there, and naturally they're going to fall out, so that's nothing to worry about. My biggest advice to anyone, and I think this is really important, whatever your result is just take a breath and research it, speak to other people. The best thing I could have done for myself is exactly what I did. Did I freak out immediately? Of course I did, absolutely. I then spoke to other people that I know have been through the same process, people that I know have had the same results as me. Like I said, I spoke to my GP, I spoke to a nurse, I spoke to a helpline, which I'm gonna put in the description. I'm gonna put a link in the description below. And it just really helped take away the fear that those results had over me. And once you realise how common it is and how many other people it does happen to, it really helps put it into perspective and realise that it's manageable and it really isn't anything to be scared of. So obviously I only had my colposcopy this morning, so I haven't had my results yet. I should receive my biopsy results somewhere in the next 4 weeks. I went and grabbed myself some ibuprofen afterwards, you know, and it was from Marks and Spencer's, so it's good stuff. And you know, I was in a good mood, so me and my mum bought some scones, or scones, however you, but I'm not here to judge. I'm super grateful for all the people who spoke to me about their experiences. I spoke to so many of my friends, like a crazy amount of my friends have been through this process or something similar. Even people I don't know reached out to me on social media, and it was just really nice to chat to so many people. And I, you know, it was really helpful for me, and hopefully it was helpful for them. And it is really important to talk about these things. And like I said a minute ago, it can really help put things into perspective for you and just help you learn how common this sort of stuff is. And then it's just not this big scary thing that you need to be afraid of at all. The best way to conquer anything is to educate yourself, learn everything that you can learn about it. I spoke to a wonderful lady at Joe's Trust, which, if you haven't heard of them, they are the UK's leading cervical cancer charity, and their page is just full of information about all things to do with the cervix. So, you know, your smear, the results of colposcopy, the results of the colposcopy, blah, blah. But I was just having a bit of an anxious time, and I thought I had nothing to lose, I'll give them a call. And as I said, she was a really, really nice lady, and she just helped me talk through some of my fears and helped me rationalize them, and just really gave me some peace of mind, and it was honestly invaluable, so I recommend. Doing all the research I did also meant that when I did go to my colposcopy this morning, there was nothing that happened that I didn't expect. So nothing shocked me, and I wasn't afraid. I was a little bit nervous going into the hospital. I think that was, you know, pretty normal. But everything she spoke to me about beforehand, about what was going to happen, I already knew, and I was expecting everything that happened in the actual procedure. I was expecting the stuff and the cramps that I felt afterwards. I was expecting, and it just made the whole thing a really relaxed experience for me. And I feel really good having done it. I felt the same when I had my smear as well. I felt kind of proud of myself because I knew that I was doing something that was looking after me and my body, and that's just really important. The ladies who did mine today said that quite a lot of women will book to have the procedure done and not turn up. For anyone who has any fear about going for a smear, the smear fear, copyright me. I can understand that smears and colposcopies could be a pretty uncomfortable procedure and something that someone could be afraid of doing. In terms of a pain factor, my smear wasn't really comfortable, but it wasn't horrendously painful. If you're feeling embarrassed about going, just remember that we've all got body parts. A lot of them look pretty similar, and those nurses and doctors have seen a lot of coochies in their time, and to them it's just another day in the office. Perhaps you're even like me. I'm 28 and was 28 last year when I had my first smear, and I should have had my first one when I was 25. It sounds kind of strange to say, and it's a little bit embarrassing, but I didn't not book a smear because I was afraid of any pain or I was embarrassed. I didn't book a smear because I thought if I didn't get one, then I couldn't get bad results, and therefore obviously logic doesn't really prevail on that one. But if you are scared of the results, don't be. As I've been talking about in this whole video, they are totally manageable and treatable. There is a lot of talk right now about people being afraid to go because of COVID. If you're worried about safety in hospitals, I've been in and out of GPs and hospitals more times than is normal in the last few weeks, and I've never felt more safe. They've got everything in place, temperature checks, hand sanitizers. Today they even gave me a piece of paper, which I'm going to insert in a second, to put on my chair after I'd used it, so that anyone else coming into the waiting room knew that they couldn't use that chair because it hadn't been cleaned yet. So they've thought of a lot of good stuff. So I just ask people to be brave, book your smear. I cannot stress enough how worth it is and how good you're going to feel afterwards for getting out there and doing it. And if you have no fears and you just haven't done it, you've got no excuse. Get it done. If you need to talk to somebody, always do. Talk to me. I've got no issue and no shame talking about these things. Vagina, vagina, vagina. I don't care. Let's talk about it. Let's eliminate the fear and the stigma, and let's all have healthy cervixes. I'll see you in the next one. There won't be a next one.